In the heart of the semi-desert Karoo region, fragile, succulent-rich plains were painstakingly restored to their former glory. A massive piece of land was established as a sanctuary for wildlife. This is Sanbona. I'm Ashley Dowds, and this is my Africa, my home. I dig deep into the past to make sense of the present. I explore the natural environment to find the driving force behind my continent's attraction. But it hides another face, an elusive side, filled with excitement and packed with adventure.
Where only succulents thrive, man suffers. That was a very tough lesson for the Voortrekker Boers, who packed up their wagons and they fled English rule in the Cape Colony back in the 1830s.
Apart from exploring uncharted terrain, a semi-desert area formed an almost impenetrable barrier between the Cape of Good Hope and the northern parts of South Africa. It is called the Karoo, possibly deduced from the Khoikhoi word Karoo, meaning desert.
A few months ago, I had the privilege of spending some time at this incredible place with Donnie Lawrence, who's able to unlock the magic of the Little Karoo, as this region is known. It didn't take much to convince me to come back to this private reserve called Sanbona. At 54,000 hectares, I've only just begun to explore it.
The Little Karoo landscape is twisted and surreal. Emphasizing the massive forces that shaped it millions of years ago, this truly is the land before time.
Yeah, I mean, all these mountains look bent out of shape. If you look down there, it looks like it's crumbling. It looks like it's been shoved into that sort of position from the side.
It has.
Oh,
it has. Yeah, no, it sure has. Yeah, the rocks on Sanbona was formed when Africa was still part of the supercontinent Gondwana. And continental pressure from the south basically shaped these mountain ranges known as the Cape Fold mountain ranges. And you can just imagine the pressure. I mean, if you look at those rock formations, that is mud rock. The pressure was so strong that these horizontal layers actually cracked up and ended up in a horizontal shape like that. Actually, I gave you a very short explanation of the geology of this area. I mean, it's much more information about the geology, so that was very basic, but over here is something really interesting that also forms part of this whole geological process. I'd like to show you this rock. Now, in this geological processes, there are different minerals as well. And in this rock is a very good example. This is a piece of quartzite with milky quartz veins in between. And milky quartz is really interesting. It's a pure mineral that dissolves when it gets exposed to temperatures over 300 degrees Celsius. Because of all the underground water in the early days, those minerals were dissolved and carried by the groundwater and float in between the sedimentary layers, the horizontal layers, getting close to the surface, cool down and crystallize and got trapped in these rock formations, in the harder formations. Now, over many years, these softer rock would have eroded, exposing these pure quartz veins. And on Sanbona and the Little Karoo, you find a lot of what is known as the Quartz Field regions or quartz patches. We have pure milky quartz areas that create a specific microclimate. Some stage the Falklands Plateau started moving away from the Kalahari Craton, creating what is known as the Cape Basin. A lot of sediments settled down in this area, especially lots of marine sediments as well, which is proof that marine life also occurred here, and we will see that in some of the fossils that I can show you. Actually, I picked up some remains of what was known as a crinoid, which is a filter feeding in the marine period on Sanbona Reserve. These are little segments, you stack them up like this. These are just little discs that remained from this little living organism now, fossilized. Beautiful.
And you've seen the whole picture. You've seen a sketch.
I've seen sketches of them, yes.
Fossils have been discovered in numbers in the Karoo, and just over a hill on a plain, we find the petrified remains of a creature that lived here millions of years ago.
But imagine that's on the ocean floor there, and you reckon it had some sort of filter system on the top here, catching detritus.
Yeah, if we look at the sketches, that's the kind of shape that it had.
So presumably, I'm lying here 400 million years ago, and I'm looking up, and there are all sorts of giant creatures swimming around me. It's a crazy thought.
And that little organism on the bottom.
It's amazing.
Filter feeding.
This is just mind-blowing, even more so when one realizes how late the human race arrived in the history of Earth.
So the first humans to exist around here were known as the San, or the Bushmen. They made a negligible impact on this environment. They were hunter-gatherers. They existed here about 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. So they ate felt food, they hunted. Their vision is what's reflected in the name Sanbona. Bona means to see, and San is obviously referring to the people that lived here.
The Bushmen preceded all other people by more than 80,000 years. And Roman interprets the subtle clues about their lifestyle, captured in rock art.
Roman, why are these unique to this area?
This is very important painting in our San culture. And you can see all guys were hunting, and they're also walking in single file.
They look like they're carrying something too.
Yeah, and this first one carrying a quiver. They are hunting on a single file. So when the animals smell on one sense that coming, and also they don't want to kill some of the small plants. It's very important to stay on a single file.
The survival of the Bushmen often depended on their respect for nature and knowledge of felt plants. Many of these applications sadly were lost over time, but some of them endured.
Actually, I've often seen Scaletium tortuosum, known as Bushman's kohoed, in this specific area as well. It's a very interesting plant that I'd like to show you and to tell you more about.
A Bushman's chewing
Yeah, here
stuff.
we go. There's one right over there. It's an anesthetic when they wanted to extract their teeth, and also puts them on a bit of a high. And today it's also still used as a natural sedative, and it's commercially produced.
Scaletium. Why is it called scaletium? Skeleton?
Yeah, it's not very clear on this little plant, the specific one, but it forms an outer layer, and when it dries out, you just see the dried out veins, and it looks like a little skeleton, yeah.
There are more than 6,000 species of succulents in the Karoo succulent biome, often with descriptive names, a consequence of their unique appearances.
Just mind your step, there are very unique little plants growing in this area.
Oh well.
Small little succulents, so just be careful where you step.
What did you call this? A quartz field?
Yeah, this is a quartz field, or quartz patch. Actually, here's one of the very unique plants I'd like to show you. This is a plant that typically grows on these smoky quartz patches. In Afrikaans, we have very descriptive names. If you look at the shape of this leaf, the Afrikaans name is haibekkie, which means shark's mouth.
Shark mouth, yeah.
And I mean, look at that. That
Very appropriate.
resembles the head of a great white shark, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the Gabaean species. There's also more of them growing in this area, like this one over here. That one, if you look at the leaf shape, the common name, baby bottom.
It was coming to me.
Yeah, both of these species produce a beautiful purple flower in the flowering season.
I think I saw one on there. Where was it?
They're very opportunistic flowers as well. Maybe we had good rains recently, so it's possible.
So they're really attracted to this area because the soil is cooler?
Yes, if you look at the white stones all around you, this is Smoky Quartz. Remember this morning I showed you a piece of quartzite with a pure Smoky Quartz vein in it? This is just at a much bigger scale, where these minerals got trapped and the softer soils eroded, exposed these Smoky Quartz fields.
Although Sanbona now represents pristine little Karoo, this wasn't always the case.
So historically, this is sheep country. Donnie. I mean, I think of the Karoo and I think of sheep.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, obviously, the grazing that they've got here is suitable for sheep.
Definitely, and the sheep in this area, I'm sure you would have heard about Karoo lamb. You see that on so many menus in restaurants.
It's the best lamb, yeah.
The flavor of the meat of the Karoo sheep is very distinct, and that comes from a specific plant that they feed on in this region and also in the greater Karoo. This is a plant that gives the meat that specific flavor, that distinct flavor. This is called an anchor Karoo. You can break up a piece and just smell it. You can just imagine that scent actually goes into the meat, and that gives it that distinct flavor.
Menthol. The hint of menthol.
The farms that are now Sanbona were overgrazed and mostly devoid of wildlife that once roamed the open plains in their millions. Springbok, the nimble gazelles of southern Africa, the majestic gemsbok with its beautiful tawny color and contrasting black tail and face, and the dignified eland have in most cases only survived in the Bushman paintings. The idea with Sanbona was to painstakingly turn back the ecological clock and reverse the damage done to the environment by successive centuries of hunting and farming. With fences removed, game was reintroduced back into the reserve. And then came the predators. In 2003, lions were captured and kept for some time in holding pens. This was done to acclimatize them to their new home. After several weeks and minimizing exposure to people, they were eventually released. Before the start of the Sanbona release program, lion had not hunted on these lands for 300 years.
How are the lions doing in the reserve?
Actually, they're doing very well at the moment. They have been for quite a long time. It's been a success story. The lions we see at the top there are 3 females, 2 white lionesses, it's a mother and a daughter, and then one of the tawny females. She's the oldest lion on the reserve at the moment. And then to the far right is the male we have at the moment. It's also one of the white lions. There's another tawny lioness. She's not with this group at the moment. She gave birth to 2 cubs about 8-9 weeks ago. So she's still hanging out on her own.
Tell me about this thing about having a white lion here. Is that a freak of nature? What is white lion?
It's recessive gene carried by tawny lions, but there's only about a 25% chance of that gene actually coming through. The first white lions that we introduced to Sanbona, quite recently they were moved to Shamwari, to the Born Free Foundation, to have a nice retirement. But these are some of their grandchildren basically, and they're doing very well. They're hunting very successfully. This male has fathered the 2 cubs that we have. It's very, very exciting. He's only about 4 years old now.
And then they move away, restless and uncomfortable with the presence of their century-old nemesis, man. Donnie and I are on the edge of overstepping the boundary of approach. It's time to give them their space. And yet, when approached by vehicle, they stay relaxed, at ease with a machine that is not in their reference of feared enemies. During the same time that the lions were released on Sanbona, another cat species that disappeared from most of the Karoo were released as well. Now, a few years later, they've established themselves as one of the iconic predators of Sanbona. One of the game rangers informs Dani that a female with 2 cubs are in the northeastern part of the reserve, a 2-hour drive from us, but 2 males are fairly close by. We opt to go and search for the brothers.
The cheetahs are also doing really well. We have a very good, very strong gene pool. They're breeding very successfully, and our cheetahs are very sought after.
Tracks in the sand indicate the presence of the 2 youngsters, who might now be close by.
Actually, if you look at the tracks of cats, it doesn't matter where in the world. If you look at a track, you have what is called the digits, or the toes. Then you have what is called the intermediate pad at the back. Now with all cats, at the back of this intermediate pad you have 3 lobes, 1, 2, 3. Now this cheetah was walking in our direction, and that is the intermediate pad. See the 1, 2, 3 lobes, you can clearly see that.
The flick of a tail betrays their position, and we advance to within a few meters of them without the cats seeming upset about our presence. In fact, they're both downright lazy. These two cats have formed a coalition. This is quite common among younger cheetah males, regardless of the fact that they, like most other cats except lions, prefer to be single.
A lot of research has been done by Dr. Gus Mills in the Galagadi on cheetahs, and these two specific ones we're looking at are two brothers.
One of the males marks his territory, and this serves as a warning to others to stay clear. Females, however, are always welcome. The tip of the tail is white in contrast with the rest of their bodies.
That's commonly referred to as a follow me sign.
This helps the coalition males to keep track of each other when they hunt, and in the case of females with cubs, these markings make it easier for the youngsters to follow their mother. The flowing mountains of the Little Karoo block moisture in the air, and the region has a higher rainfall than the average semi-desert areas in southern Africa.
We've had a lot of rain just recently. Here we are in June. Is it the winter rainfall season now?
Actually, yes, last week we had rain for 3 days. It was really good rain, very soft rain. The rainfall on Sanbona is very unpredictable because we fall in a transition zone between summer and winter rainfall, which is mainly caused by the Warmwaterberg on the reserve itself. So the southern part of the reserve, annually it rains about 300 millimeters of rain, and the northern part about 150 millimeters of rain per year.
This fluctuation in different parts of Sanbona and the vegetation diversity has made it possible to introduce a wide variety of species, and one of them is giraffe, the biggest antelope in the world.
They were introduced as an extralimital species, which means historically they did not occur here. But for Sanbona, as a tourist attraction, it is an animal that do really well. And also, if you look at the riverline, this riverine thicket, they also play a very important role in our ecosystem.
In its diversified landscapes and vegetation types, Sanbona's environmental managers have found a golden thread. Straight and simple, they use a combination of wildlife species, each with its own specific vegetation preference, to maintain a balance in the natural environment. And this is one of the reasons why Africa's second biggest land mammal also found a home at Sanbona. Winter temperatures here can sometimes drop below freezing point at night, but I hardly notice this as Dani and I go in search of another experience. Our slate is clean, ready to be filled by the wonders of the Little Karoo. In the riverbed, some bulky figures enjoy the early morning winter's sun on their backs.
Actually, over here you can see some white rhino. The white rhinos in Sanbona were introduced in 2003 as one of the extralimital species, basically just to clear up this very thick riverine area.
Shaking off the coldness of night, one of the rhinos blocks the road, refusing to budge from her spot in the sun. Neither she nor her crash is aware of the giants of Africa sneaking up on them. And then all hell breaks loose as an ancient, unsettled grudge between elephants and rhinos flares up. Elephants don't take kindly to sharing their environment with other species, and the rhinos know this. The female that blocked the road is nervous, ready to flee. The rhinos know instinctively to stay out of the way of the matriarch and her family. The elephants will kill them if they don't keep their distance. Mercy is really just a notion of man. If left unchecked in confined game reserves, elephant numbers can easily outgrow the potential of an area to sustain them.
How do you manage the numbers of elephant here?
Actually, yes, it's a very sensitive ecosystem, so it's important that we manage the numbers because of our seasons also being very, very unpredictable sometimes. Sometimes we have drought, sometimes we have floods, so we need to keep a check on that. At the moment we are using a substance called Improvac, It's a substance that is quite new on the market, still being tested, but so far it seems like it's working. It's a hormone inhibitor that the bulls get darted with and basically suppresses their hormone levels and prevents them from going into must.
Kept apart from the rest of Sanbona's wildlife are the grumpy old cattle of Africa. They are buffalo. They're short-tempered and they won't hesitate to attack when they feel threatened. In fact, these docile-looking animals have killed many people in Africa.
You know, appearances really are deceptive, eh, Donnie? I mean, these look like domestic animals.
Ashley also once had a quote from one of the old hunters. He says that buffalo bulls always look at you like you owe them money, which I think is quite a good expression if you look at a buffalo bull, one of those old Dagga boys.
Surprisingly, the environmental driver of this larger-than-life, rugged land is not the massive animals that roam here, but one of the smallest.
Actually, on the left is something interesting I'd like to show you. If you look around here, you'll see the soil is a different color. This is a semi-arid region, and in this area, fire will not really have an impact. I mean, you can try to set fire to these plants, they will not really burn, they won't do anything. Termites fulfill that role in this area. They play a very important role in recycling the nutrients.
Sanbona is a classic, although very unique, example of ecotourism at work. It relies largely on the income supplied by visitors to the reserve, but it is, however, much more than a comfortable hideaway from everyday rigors of modern society. This massive reserve plays a decisive role in the conservation of the very sensitive Karoo environment, of which a mere 3.5% habitat is under formal protection. From farming with small livestock to the big five roaming freely on its plains, this place has made its mark on me. As the horizon devours the sun, I enjoy a glass of good South African wine with a person who was a stranger a few days ago, but is now a friend who has shared some ancient knowledge, a few million years of history, and his passion for this land.
The amazing thing about being here, essentially for me, is the timeless quality of being in this landscape. It's just so vast. You can feel that ancient quality that must have been felt by the San Bushmen as they hunted around here. And what's really great is that you can see their pictures painted on the caves right here, an event that happened 3,000 years ago in this landscape. And that's not to mention things like approaching a cheetah within meters, which is very special. But it's this timelessness of being here that's the essence for me. These spines of mountains arch over desert floor. And this was once an ocean that was shared by two continents joined at the hip. It's like the geology of time right in front of you.